What if one of the most iconic paintings in history was rebuilt entirely in Minecraft? Well, that's exactly what I'm doing today. I'm a professional Minecraft builder / artist, and in this video, I'm recreating Johannes Vermeer's legendary painting, Girl with a Pearl Earring. Now, this build is just one part of a much larger project I've been working on, but you'll have to wait a little longer for that one to be revealed. So if you don't want to miss it, make sure to subscribe. So without any further introductions, let's jump into the build. As always, we begin by breaking down the image. I take the original painting and simplify it, turning it into basic manageable shapes, which gives us a blueprint we can follow in-game. With that ready, I hop into my Axiom editor. This is where all the magic happens. Quick side note, many of you ask me what tools I'm using to make these builds, and the main tool you see me using is Axiom, which is a free mod, but I also use a little bit of World Edit and Archeon sometimes. I start using the shape tool to lay out the foundation of the upper body, a big rectangle for the torso, and some cylinders for the arms. I use the path tool to get started on the neck. Once I've got that blocked in, I blend the shapes together and define the clothing just a little bit more. Nothing too fancy yet, just some rough forms. I'm not worrying about detail at this stage because we're about to scale this whole thing up. So I select the upper body, double its size, and now it's time to build the head. Now I like to build heads separately, so I get started by working on a single axis, then we'll rotate it into place later on. I start with a simple sphere, the base of the skull. Then I add a couple more spheres to fill out the jaw. Once that's in place, I begin sculpting the most important features, building out the cheeks, hollowing space for the eyes, and roughing in the nose and the lips. You'll notice I'm only working on one half of the face, and that's done on purpose. It lets me focus on proportions and shape, and later on I'll flip it to the other side for symmetry. Next, I drop in spheres for the eyes and sculpt eyelids over them, and once I'm happy with the structure, I mirror everything over. Now, of course, no human face is perfectly symmetrical, but this method helps avoid early mistakes, and for the natural asymmetry, well, that'll come in later as we build. I know it looks a little creepy at this stage, but you've got to trust the process. With the head sculpted, I rotate it into position and place it onto the body. I also scale it up just slightly since it was looking a little bit small. Then I blend it into the neck and start smoothing out those harsh edges from the rotation. Same goes for the body. Now that it's scaled up, I go in and refine all the folds and wrinkles. For the white collar, I use a torus shape and then shape it further by hand. Then I start sculpting the turban, layering shapes right onto the head with a new placeholder block. For the top part, I sculpt the folds in using a circular motion, which gives us those smooth flowing clothing folds. And then I switch back to the path tool again, using it to shape the long hanging pieces of the turban. And finally, we can't forget about the most iconic part, the pearl earring. At this point, the structure is done, and now it's time to bring it to life. I start replacing all the placeholder blocks with their base colors: white terracotta for the skin, great block for general skin tones, spruce flanks for the clothing. It has that slight greenish tint, just like the original painting. And finally, clay for the blue part of the turban, since it has that perfect blue hue I'm looking for. Then I run a few shadow commands from a single light source, blocking in the main shadows and creating some depth. Now here's the thing, I really want this to feel like an old Renaissance painting. That means slightly desaturated tones and that aged green-yellow color that you see when a varnish begins to degrade over time. So I try using blocks that reflect that color: birch, spruce, dried kelp, and even some gold and copper ore blocks. This part takes many hours, and I tested a ton of block combinations, matched colors to the painting, and studied how the light interacted with the subject. Once the base tones were locked in, I went further by adding even more blocks to smooth and blend everything together. Tiny highlights in the eyes and some subtle shadows on the lips are the little touches that make the whole thing feel slightly alive. But we're not done just yet. This is where I go back in and add the finest details by redefining some shapes, smoothing colors, and using smaller blocks to add texture across the entire build. To show you just how much of a difference this step makes, here's a quick before and after stair slabbing. Finally, I decided to move the build and I added a simple background and painted it with Go Paint. Now every painting deserves a proper frame, so I grabbed a few references of vintage frames and built one that fits the painting perfectly. And with the frame finally in place, the build is complete. Enjoy this short showcase. I hope you enjoyed watching this as much as I enjoyed building it. If you found this entertaining or helpful, consider supporting my work through Patreon or checking out my website. You can even grab some of these builds for yourself. Links are in the description. And of course, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.